I also did a piece about Dr. Masters. While I was writing the Spock book, I was asked at Newsday to do a profile of Masters, a quick daily story on the day of Masters' retirement. And I got off the phone after about 45 minutes, maybe at most an hour, with Masters. And he told me, essentially the basic, but all the type of stuff that he's, Masters, like Spock, had been interviewed a million times, or seemingly so. And so, you really have to keep finding the right type of open sesame question. In other words, questions that they've not been asked before that yield new information. And that first interview over the phone with Masters certainly didn't do that. It was a quick story for the paper. But afterwards, I got off the phone and I said, man, a man and a woman who are not married, studying love and sex, particularly sex, and try to document how the body responds during sexual performance to find out, particularly when things were wrong with couples that were looking for help, so that medicine could help couples having difficulties in the bedroom. That was the overall impetus of their work, Masters and Johnson. But if you could do this story of a dual biography of Masters and this woman Johnson, who came in just looking for a job as a secretary, and she had a number of skills herself that she helped really balance out. Not only the strengths, but some of the weaknesses of Masters. And together, this man and woman who were not married, then get married. They're married for 20 years. They become world famous with their work together. And then after 20 years, they get divorced and nobody knows why. And so I was really determined with Masters of Sex to find out that story. And it was absolutely amazing. I don't write novels, I write nonfiction books, but their story, it really was almost like a novel. It was astounding. And so I came back to the idea of Masters and Johnson, always in the back of my mind. I just took a long time to get to it. And by that point, Masters had died. And I didn't know how to contact Virginia Johnson. She was essentially a recluse. And I went down a couple of different paths trying to gain people's cooperation and to approach Virginia Johnson. And one particular person was definitely the wrong person, but this person seemed like the right person, but actually there was a tension between that person and Virginia Johnson that I was not aware of at the time. So eventually I was looking in the phone book, and she had changed her name so that Virginia Johnson, she hadn't changed her name, but she was using an alias fundamentally. In the phone book, Virginia Johnson was using Mary Masters. That's how she was listed. And she was born Mary Virginia Eshelman. That was her original name. And she didn't use Mary. She relied on Virginia. But in the phone book, she was listed as Mary Masters. And I just happened to stumble across that, just looking to see if there was any Masters relatives or whatever. And I saw Mary Masters. And I left a phone message with her. And then surprisingly, she called me back. And we had a 4-hour conversation on the phone. And I try to record all the conversations that I do for books. And it was an extraordinary conversation. Before the 4 hours was over, I had asked her how she had lost her virginity. Not exactly the opening type of question that you ask people, but it was germane. And we talked about not only sex, but we talked about love, the elusiveness of love. And it certainly was elusive in her her life. And she talked about losing her virginity to this boy with fiery red hair. And actually, she never really told me the name of the fellow. I found it out through other sources later on, and she confirmed who it was. But it was a story of predicted in the high school yearbook that Virginia would get married to this boy. His boy's name was Gordon Garrett, and eventually she didn't get married to him because she wanted to go off to the big city. They were on a really small farm, in a small farm community called Golden City, Missouri. And they wanted to, she wanted to move on. And so what happened with that relationship and all her other relationships became a big part of the drama of Masters of Sex.
Would you talk about that a little bit as the writing began? You did the interviews. Did you have subsequent interviews with Masters also?
Well, Masters had died by the time I did the book, but I did have that 1 hour interview that I had done with him previously. But I talked to his family. His son provided a lot of insights about his father, but he also provided an unpublished memoir that his father had written.